for it and make sure your name gets on the list.
It's on a nice clipboard.
It's on a nice clipboard. Okay, Mary, can we do one roll call?
Yes, Bagley Township,
3,
Charlton Township, Chester Township,
4.
Who's Charlton? Oh, Keith, I got a bill for you. See me afterwards. Glad you're here. Corwith,
3.
Dover, 3. Elmira,
5.
oh, they get the prize tonight. Yay. Hayes, 1. Darn. Livingston, 5. Well, we don't have any giveaways tonight, so. Cedar Lake,
2. Our gratitude.
City, and then I'll write down our sheriff and undersheriff and Troy and I don't know what other.
That's Matt. Look, we see Matt.
Oh, Matt, yes. So I'll make sure I have all those listed.
Mayor, Commissioner here, Kerwin.
Oh, yes, sir, okay.
And then we have Dana's here as
No
well.
balls for me, please.
But I know that Dana's here, yeah.
Good, okay.
Okay.
All right. We need to approve the minutes from the October 18th meeting.
I'll just give a quick synopsis. It was really simple. So the first paragraph deals with us talking about the treasure, which is $2,009.26. And we had Carmen Smith from Consumers Energy to speak about solar energy and that type of energy is becoming more and more prevalent and they're busy working on it and so on and so forth. And then there were questions that were asked about solar energy, and he answered those. Matt Brassey, our county administrator, spoke about his position in his first few months, introduced some other people within the county that were with him that night. One was Paula, the new appointed treasurer, and questions were asked and answered again about that. And I told the people about their new forms for the PRE, the principal resident exemption. They were always done through the boards of review, and that has changed this year. So there's going to be a new way of keeping track and reporting the homesteads moving forward. Lisa McComb, who's going to be our second speaker tonight, talked to us about the ARPA fundings and state downsizing of their resources. And we set our schedule for this year.
All right, we need to approve that. Would anybody like to approve the minutes?
Some township person, Rudy, thank you.
Second. Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Treasurer's report, Mary again.
Well, I said there's no changes from last time. So we've got $2,009 that is in our current budget. We assume all the financial responsibility for the veterans flags throughout the county. And last year we paid $400 more than what we paid before. So it was $2,400 of what we paid. And I'm expecting that there'll be another increase this year. So when we get the flags ordered, we're gonna be at bare bones between that and paying for the required publications that we have to do, so.
And also, all us township people, Mary was so nice to hand us our bills for 2003, very nice color, appreciate it. And that doesn't include our dues and the cemetery.
The dues are $150 for each unit, and the city of Gator goes with us every year, which is very kind of them to always do. And then the cemetery flags are set by each township with who has this township cemetery, who does not, how many, how big, and so on. So we've got quite the formula to make it as fair as possible to cover it. But when I add it all up, we're still not gonna be collecting enough to pay probably for all the flags for this year. So that's why I say we're at bare bones.
And also on the second page, Mary's got us a list of township budget hearing dates. And we need to look at that and get with Mary as soon as we can to make sure that's fine, so that she can get that noted. Now that we got through that, our first person is going to be for the National Guard expansion. Mike McNamara has been spearheading the group.
And then Jim Knight.
And Jim Knight, and we would like you guys to go ahead and go, because I know a lot of the people that are here for that purpose.
Yeah,
So
where do you want me to go?
you can go right up there and speak if you want.
Front and center.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Knight. I'm from Bear Lake Township in Kalkaska County. I'm currently the township trustee on the township board. I became engaged in this opposition because I received a DNR email. And being an elected official, we were not told about this expansion plan. We found out through other means. So that's how we originally found out about this. But in my involvement, and we've been going to townships and the counties, we've been working relentlessly to try to get resolutions. It's been very successful. In fact, Dover just signed onto it today. I didn't know that, but thank you very much for that. We've had over 50 now entities, local government entities, and we also have over 25, I think it's 27, organizations, whether they be from the DNR, or excuse me, from environmental, or from the outdoor groups, associations, and private businesses that have signed in opposition to this proposal. This I want to share with you because I'm not going to get into the proposal because I think everybody knows about this proposal of 162,000 acres of public land. So I'll just tell you this, that recently I was at a meeting and someone mentioned, are these resolutions, what do they mean, or do they really mean anything? And I can tell you this, that indeed they do. Less than 2 weeks ago, beginning of January, I received a phone call from a senior aide from Governor Whitman's office. And this guy asked me, he says, I see your name on top of a lot of documents. I just want to ask you, what is this about? What's this opposition? What are you guys opposing this for? So I proceeded for the next hour or so in telling him exactly, why we oppose this and how important up north is and keeping it that way. And at some point in the meeting, he said, well, isn't this just vacant land? Vacant land. And I had to take a minute. And my response to that is this vacant land that you're referring to, our lands, the woods, the waters, the streams, where lifelong memories have been made by all of us up here and tens of thousands of people that come up here and recreate. So indeed, it's not just vacant land. I want to make this perfectly clear to you that this is land that we treasure, and there's lifelong memories that we have here. We do not want to see this go to the military. Is this pure Michigan, or is it going to be pure militarization? And it's not a fact that you're going to be next to it. You're going to be within the confines of it. That's how big this is, not only with the land expansion, but also the air expansion that they're going after too. So with that said, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for standing up in this opposition. We believe that we've got the attention of the governor. They wouldn't reach out if we didn't. So thank you so much for it. And by the way, none of us in this group are anti-military. I can even say that everyone here is anti-military. It's not anti-military. In fact, Mike is a veteran from Camp Grayling, and he's going to speak here in just a second. And I would never tarnish the image of my father and my uncle who served in the military honorably, and I would never go against their military record and opposing this. This is about this proposal and what they're trying to do to take this land away from all of us. If this isn't stopped, this is going to change northern Michigan forever, because a 20-year lease means forever. So with that said, thank you so much. Next to speak is Monty Willis.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Just really quickly, can I see a show of hands, like how many people have at least heard about this proposed expansion? Most everybody? Okay. So, my name is Monty Bolus. I'm one of the founding members of a group called Camp Grayling Expansion. As Mr. Knight just said, we are for the military. We support Camp Grayling, but we strongly oppose the proposed expansion. And just want to tell you about myself really quickly. I'm really not good at this. I'm very uncomfortable speaking in front of people. So if I stumble, please bear with me. I'm here because this is something I'm very passionate about. I want to tell you a little bit about Camp Grayling. And for those who have heard me, again, this is the third time in 8 days I've spoken in this room. So if you've heard me say this before, I apologize to you. Camp Grayling is one of 48 National Guard training areas in the contiguous United States. You know, essentially each state has their own training area. Compared to all other training areas in all other states, Camp Grayling is not only the largest training area, it is overwhelmingly the largest. In most cases, by tens of thousands of acres. In many cases, by 100,000 acres or more. So this is absolutely not a situation in which Camp Grayling is undersized. We keep being told that one of the reasons they need this additional 162,000 acres is because they need more room to engage in modern warfare training. Well, we know that that's a bit misleading because every other state's training area is considerably smaller than what Camp Grayling currently has available to them, and yet each National Guard in all the other states achieve the same superior level of training and combat preparedness as Camp Grayling, and they all do it on a fraction of the amount of land. So, and I think that's a very key point here. Do they actually need additional land? And I want to give you just a really quick example. Camp Grayling, which is 148,000 acres, it's 230 square miles. In a typical year, according to its own website, trains between 10,000 and 15,000 guardsmen and guardswomen and reservists. There's a training area in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, and the name of it is Fort Indiantown Gap. It's an unusual name, that's the name of it, Fort Indiantown Gap. For 5 of the last 7 years, according to the National Guard, Fort Indiantown Gap has been the busiest National Guard training facility in America. In a typical year, Fort Indiantown Gap trains 113,000 guardsmen, 113,000. Now remember, I just said Camp Grayling comparatively trains 10 or 15,000. Would you believe that Fort Indiantown Gap trains 113,000 guardsmen a year on only 18,000 acres?
Wow.
On only 18,000 acres. And again, Camp Grayling trains 10 to 15,000 on 148,000 acres. So I wanted to show you that comparison. The other reason I'm here, and I want to keep this classy, we all come to these meetings, at some point we come to these meetings as a blank slate. We know nothing about this, and we come to these meetings with the intent of learning, but we also come to these meetings with the assumption that we're going to be given straightforward, honest, factual information. And what I've learned, this is probably the 25th meeting I've attended, and maybe the 12th or 15th I've spoken at. This young lady sitting in front of me, her name's Martha Doobie, she has recorded for the public record all of these meetings the commander of Camp Grayling, Colonel Scott Myers, has spoke at, and you would be shocked to see how he changes his story from meeting to meeting. And this isn't my opinion, it's available. If you go to YouTube and you look up Camp Grayling Expansion, one of the first choices that'll come up will be any of Ms. Dubé's videos, and you can see how from meeting to meeting to meeting, he's changing his tune. I want to give you a very concrete example of how frustrating this has been. I was at a meeting in Frederick Township, and Colonel Myers was attempting to tell the audience there that with regard to the airspace expansion, you've all heard about the proposed airspace expansion, that any expansion that was going to take place would only be vertically. You know, they take the existing footprint of the restricted airspace and they would expand it up and down, but not sideways. And I stood up in frustration and I said, Colonel Myers, how can you say that? It's in the strategic plan for Camp Grayling that you are going to expand the restricted airspace horizontally over the Earth's surface, not just vertically. And he sat there and it was recorded and absolutely denied that that was going to happen. But wouldn't you know, 5 weeks later, they spring it on us that they are going to expand the restricted airspace, not just vertically, but 1,600 nautical square miles horizontally over the Earth's surface, essentially from here over to Alpena. So what does that mean to everybody in this room? What it means is, according to the media, 7 to 10-fold more air traffic noise than you're used to. So think of what you normally would hear in a typical day and multiply that by 7 to 10 times. And they're going to be bringing in, more fighter jets, more of the loud planes. So that's just one concrete example of how people are coming to these meetings expecting to get straightforward, honest information. And sometimes you can deceive people by what you don't tell them. And that seems to be what's going on. And it's a real source of frustration. I've already taken up too much of your time. I want to mention one thing to you. It's very, very important. If you have a piece of paper and pencil handy, Ms. Dubé has put together a video, and I want to tell you the name of the video. If you go to YouTube and you look up this title, Camp Grayling Expansion plus airspace expansion equals militarization of Michigan. If you look that up on YouTube, it's an hour-long video, but it's the most comprehensive explanation of what our community is up against. And if you do nothing else, and you really want to become informed about this, get a cup of coffee and sit down and listen to this video that this young lady's put together for us, and it'll blow you away. Sometimes when I think back on all the things I've read that they want to do to northern Michigan, it surprises me that we're even allowed to live here, honest to goodness. And one other thing I want to leave you with is, by way of these resolutions that townships are writing opposing the expansion, and now we have like 28 townships and counties and road commissions combined that have done that, we are having an impact on Lansing. In the last month alone, I've spoke with the director of the DNR about this. She's the person who's going to be making the decision. We've spoke with the Natural Resource Commission, and as Mr. Knight was saying, we've actually had a liaison from the governor's office call and speak to us. I spoke to the gentleman's name is Nate Engel, and I spoke to him for about an hour one day. He said something to me. It's shocking how little people who live down in Lansing know about northern Michigan. He said, well, isn't this just a bunch of state land, and does anybody even live there? And I said, are you kidding me? I didn't say that. In my head I said that, but what I said to the gentleman was, sir, tens of thousands of people live in this proposed militarization zone. In the 6-county area, the 7-county area, well over 100,000. And he said, you're kidding me. I said, no, I wish I was kidding you, but I'm not. Tens of thousands of us live here. It's not like this is a bunch of vacant state land where human beings don't live. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Mike McNamara. Here's what you need to know about Mike. He's one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet. He retired from Camp Grayling as a lieutenant colonel, and he was also the deputy commander of Camp Grayling. So he is specifically familiar with Camp Grayling, and he is uniquely qualified to speak to you about this topic. Mike?
Thank you. I'd like to first talk about the maps a little bit. There's some maps going around the room. They're pretty self-explanatory. And we can't keep current with them because we just were handed another resolution about 10 minutes ago from Dover Township, so thank you very much. And we also just got notified that a township, Norwich, down in Missaukee County, also signed on with a legitimate resolution. So, Grayling math, that's what I call it. We're at like 27, 28 right now, resolutions. I suspect, I don't expect, but I suspect by the end of the week, we're gonna have 30, 31 resolutions from legitimate county, township organizations, elected officials, not just some others. Now, we know there's probably 60, 70 letters of opposition from major entities, but the ones that we really were part of, I won't say instrumental, but we were part of obtaining some community support from environmental groups, outdoor groups. We're well over 34, 35, just of what the Camp Grayling Expansion Facebook page group has done. And we're just a grassroots organization. But if you look at that map, the map is getting redder by the minute. And it took a long time to break into a lot of places. I'll give you an example. I called the Kalkaska County clerk. They don't have an administrator in Kalkaska County. At least they did this summer. And I told her who I was and what was going on, and did she know about the land grab of 163,250 plus square miles in northern Michigan, and a lot of that was in Kalkaska. And you'd have thought I told her I was from Mars and I wore a tinfoil hat, and she thought I was nuts. Well, after a couple hours, she said, I'll call you back in 2-3 hours. She called me back exactly in 2 hours and said, oh my gosh, because I gave her a lot of references from the Record Eagle and 7 and 4 News at the time. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling. But it's been deceivingly, by design, on purpose. They tried to do this in the middle of the night. They originally gave us 30 days. And by the time Bridge, Michigan, broke the story, we were 10, 12 days into it. And I'll tell you, breaking into some areas, we just were in Missaukee County here a week and a half ago, and that poor small community had no idea. They heard of the expansion, they didn't know it was about 20% of their township. So the word is finally getting out there, and now we have a lot of elected officials behind us, and it's growing and growing. I want to say that one. Number two, there's some pictures going around the room, and I made a lot of those pictures because in none of this, not 1 ounce of this is to knock the military, to knock the soldiers, but I'll tell you that some of their good neighbor policies that the commander will promise and promise and promise just isn't followed up on, it isn't led, it's not managed, and their own policies that they've made aren't holding true. And if they can't manage the 147,000 acres that is way woefully underutilized, how are they going to manage an additional 163,000? And they'll tell you that there's money that comes along with it. Well, there may be some pennies that come along with it, but you're not going to get a lot of, again, just how funding works, you're not going to get a lot of money for leased land. If they own the land, it would be a whole different ballgame. So there's not much that goes along with that, but I want to point out that those pictures are going around the room. Garfield Township, my buddy's dogs got into concertina wire that has been left, and it's not an anomaly. We find it time and time again. We hook it on one of the back gates in a controlment area at Camp Grayling, and we'll drag it miles just to get it picked up. But his dogs should have been maimed. Those 5 dogs were absolutely shredded. And luckily, no tendons, no ligaments. But still could have died of infection. Luckily, they didn't. The other part of those pictures are a bunch of roads out on the Manistee River near CCC Bridge. To somebody from Gaylord, Otsego County may not mean much. But those are county maintained, county year-round roads and machine gun fire from blanks and the brass and the clips to hold they make a belt of ammo, which are sharp like razors, left on the road. And this is not just a daily occurrence. So that's another good neighbor policy that they're breaking. One, how are they firing from county maintained roads? Two, it's not like they're inside of Fort Benning or inside of Fort Lewis or Fort Bragg. This is, the pictures you see is my buddy, his mailbox is 10 foot behind that. That's his road. That's not somewhere in the middle of the woods. That's a legit, Sunset Trail. That's Portage Creek Drive. That's Arrowhead Road, that area. The other pictures you'll see, and again, most of you probably saw them, was about the river and the rafts. At face value, pretty cool looking pictures. Except it's not a military training area. They put in at a state campground launch. I should say state campground, a state launch for river boats and longboats or canoers, and they floated from there down to CCC Bridge. But it's not a training area. And again, there could be some areas in the world where in Crawford County, Otsego, Kalkaska, Roscommon, where you'll see military guys training not too far from your household. And again, that's on the current land. This is not even in the current land. It's just, so if you're drinking a toddy, and this is exactly what happened, drinking a toddy Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, and the Vetter family starts seeing 7, it looks like a ranger school commercial going by in their front yard. Individual weapons, pistols, rifles, and crew serve weapons loaded. Now, why would they even load it? Again, loaded, I know they're loaded with blanks, but why were they even loaded in non-training area? And the DNR, Tom Barnes, the DNR's answer to that was, we checked with legal and there's nothing wrong. Well, it may be legal, but it sure ain't right. So that's another good neighbor policy that's not good. And it's not the soldiers' fault. Camp Grayling leadership has allowed that to happen. I will also tell you about some other pictures. Many of us pay special assessment for a road paving. $120, $180 a year for 10, 12, 15 years. There's pictures with a Hemet fueler parked right next to a county road commission sign in Crawford County on a Sable Trail that says no military vehicles and a big orange flag. Hemet fueler parked right next to it, Humvees right behind it, and new up-armored MTV heavy duty trucks running up and down a road that we my neighbors, pay special assessment for. So again, another good neighbor policy. And this is only a couple miles outside the front gate of Camp Grayling. So if it's happening right there in front of everybody, what's happening when no one's seeing it? My point to all this isn't not to knock a soldier. We've all gotten lost. We've all gotten turned around. We've all made mistakes. That happens. Regardless of your branch, regardless of your rank. That all happens. But saying that, nothing's done about it. Years ago when I was a young Spec 4, we used to be out there directing traffic, but that doesn't happen anymore. So I'll just leave that alone. So I can knock a lot of stuff all day long. But the part about the expansion, and the reason it's important for me to mention that, if you can't take care of what you got, we're not gonna give you any more. And again, we be in our land. And I'm not a power of the people guy. I'm not an advocate. I'm not a crusader. It's the first time I've ever opposed much publicly in my life. But I'm a Grayling kid. I grew up hunting, fishing, snowmobiling, and a lot of other outdoor activities, mushroom picking. And I think every kid in northern Michigan and adult should be given the same opportunities that I had. And I'll get into a little bit farther, because if it was about training the troops, and if I thought for 1 minute that this would save one soldier's life, I'd be all for it. I'd be 100% behind what's going on. But this, in my Grayling speak, this ain't about that. It ain't. It's about contractors using Camp Grayling property on the cheap and turning Camp Grayling into a testing facility. And if we look at where the Adjutant General came from when he was a SES employee at, for the civil service at Tardac, which is the big think tank down in Warren, Michigan, and has all these contractor connections. And now all these contractors, now he's the Adjutant General, are all trying to get in Camp Grayling. And we talked about that DBusiness magazine. And that DBusiness magazine talks about renting, leasing land for the disgustingly, quote, disgustingly inexpensive rate of $150 a day for 3,000 acres. And if we look at how contaminated all the Army Proving Grounds are, whether it be Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, on the Chesapeake Bay, which is a Superfund site, which will never recover. If we look at Yuma, if we look at Dugway Proving Grounds out in Utah, Yuma in Arizona, obviously, contamination sites. We've not done a good job of taking care of our testing centers and our proving ground. We sure don't want them with no oversight. If they can't even control the traffic, if they can't even control the rubber rafts going up and down the river, if they can't control razor wire being left and dogs getting torn up, who's going to oversee these government testers or these private company testers that are potentially doing what knows what? And when we look in the experimental warfare, electronic warfare, experimental electronic warfare, or if we look at some of these records of some of these organizations and what they've done at other testing grounds, why would we let them do it on state land? They should go to a controlled environment and do their testing there where they have to pay for it. And I'll leave you one last thing, is if I thought, again, for 1 minute, this would save one soldier's life, I'd be all for it. But this is about legacy. This is about putting stars on helmets. This is about money. And thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, we'll be around for the rest of the night.
I have one right now.
Yes, ma'am.
A couple of weeks ago, there was a newscast about the PFAS.
Yes, ma'am.
Due to the contamination of the water around Grayling, due to the National Guard.
Yes,
And they
ma'am.
were censured quite a bit by Eagle. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure, I would. I also live right behind the Grayling Army Airfield. I grew up in Grayling. If I thought there was any contamination problems, I never would have bought my property and had a house built right behind the airfield. I don't mind the planes. I don't mind the military planes. I don't mind the helicopters. And the airfield is actually called McNamara Airfield, but I'm not related to that. But I've lost 2 wire-haired pointed griffons, 2 great bird dogs, due to kidney failure. I didn't know. I was perplexed. I didn't know what was going on. Both dogs had kidney failure. I thought maybe they got into something. Well, what they got into was my well water. My well water is contaminated over the standard, and I put in a whole house system to take care of that problem. There's a guy, I sit on the Restoration Advisory Board at Camp Grayling because I was so concerned about the water. And literally, I knew where stuff was buried at Camp Grayling, so they really wanted me on that board, which has been pretty helpful for them. But we've kicked that can down the road for 6 years now, and nothing's happened. But what Mary is referring to is there's a letter written by one of your own out of Gaylord, Randy Roth. Randy Roth is a supervisor for the DEQ. That letter was written by several people, but Randy signed it. All factual data, talking about PFAS contamination. There's a level of PFAS coming in from Camp Grayling out of the creeks and out of the Pike Pond area. Every creek was tested recently, 400 to 600 parts per trillion. The standard, the federal standard, which is way too high anyway, in my opinion, is 70 parts. So the standard 70, 400 to 600 parts per trillion flowing into Lake Margrethe, which flows down Portage Creek, which flows into the Manistee River. That letter really condemns and damns the Guard about the slow process that they've done of doing anything to clean this up. They just kick the can down the road, they do a few things, and we're making progress and we're trying, but it's government guys, it takes time, and they keep just slow rolling this thing all the way. So I don't know what the answer is, and I don't claim to be, but I'm not a geologist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist. But Randy Roth from the DEQ, as the supervisor for this district, wrote a letter really to the National Guard Bureau condemning Camp Grayling and the Bureau for continuing to kick this can down the road. I suspect Randy will be retired in a few months. I suspect that, but I don't know that. But when you come out against another agency, I don't think it's going to fare well for them. Let's see, I guess to answer your question, Mary, do I want to talk about it? Anywhere you're testing where they fought fires, they're going to find PFAS. I was in a township, and I won't mention it, but they said, well, we got the best township, we got the best water in the world in our township. I said, until you have it tested. And they said, we have it tested. I says, not for PFAS, you don't. And their jaws all hit the ground. They're like, yeah, you're right, we don't. So I'm telling you, the more they start testing, the more you're gonna find, I believe, this is me, but I got a lot of history and a lot of research into it. I think we're gonna find a lot of places with the DNR and the Guard have fought fires with AFFF foam. And again, I'll tell you, AFFF foam, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole for a minute, Mary. AFFF foam came from the military. Dan Schrock, a friend of mine, Vietnam vet, he died of cancer. He was a fire nut. He worked for the Guard as a fireman. He worked as a lieutenant colonel. He retired years ago. He worked for the Guard. He worked for the state fire department, firefighting crews for the wildlife division, whatever. And he volunteered at different fire departments. He would get, and again, I know this. I was a little boy when it happened. He and my dad were friends. But he would get this AFFF by the pallet, and he wasn't, it worked great, and he shared it with all his firefighting buddies. It came from the government, it went to all the local governments and municipal governments for firefighting, and the state, and that's how AFFF got in the system, and it was great. We couldn't figure out for a little bit why Grayling had a contaminated well. Well, we all kind of laughed and said, it must have been from the judo club fire. It was downtown Grayling, and they poured that foam to it for hours. Well, downstream, now that well's contaminated. That's my opinion. Am I a scientist that can back that up and would that stand up in court? No, that's what I believe. So I think I answered that.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, if I did, let me know.
No, I
You're
just, I
great.
want
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Just one last thing is I think because this is MTA affiliated here, pretty much a lot of you are elected officials that represent your township. And just a reminder, if you would consider adopting a resolution for your township, but also for your constituents, because we have to think what's good for our township and what's good for our constituents. And in this case, what you just heard here tonight, this to me is really a no-brainer here. We've listened to Colonel Myers and Tom Barnes repeatedly, and by far what Mike and Monty have said about the deception, and it really is something you should consider, because what you're being told by the camp is not necessarily the facts and truthful. What you heard from us tonight, we've said repeatedly, we don't deviate from what we say because we say the truth. We don't have to look and see what we're going to say because we got to figure, well, what did we say that time? We say these things repeatedly because of the truth. So if you would please consider adopting a resolution for not only your townships, for your constituents, because of the reasons you just heard here, because this PFAS disaster and the debacle on this cleanup continues to poison the people of Grayling. We don't want that in the next city, whether it be Gaylord, in Waters, or wherever it is. We do not want that to happen in our areas. Please join the opposition.
Can I ask a quick question? Kristi, what's his opinion on this?
I have spoke to Ken Morton personally, and Michelle Hotanga. They are careful in what they say because they don't want to come off as anti-military. But recently, Senator Hotanga told me that she was going to be reaching out to the other senators in northern Michigan and trying to sign a letter of opposition to this. Ken Borton told me to put it on his website to come out and say an official opposition to this, and he's yet to do that. But I did talk to those two individuals, and they told me they oppose this. Also, Dare Rendon, who used to be the representative, I don't know if she was here, but she's now, because of redistricting, she's in Misaki County. She was at the Crawford County meeting, and she is adamantly opposed to this and said that on record at the Crawford County Commission meeting. So the politicians are on board. We need more. We need downstate coverage. We're still finding out that there's people downstate that come up here at Recreate do not know about this. And when they come up here and all of a sudden there's a tank blocking the road where their bow hunting spot is, and they can't get through, that's the reality of what could happen here. So thank you for your questions.
Monty, did you have something else you wanted to?
I just wanted to touch on one more thing. In all of these meetings that we've attended, some version of the following question has come up. Citizens will ask, if Camp Grayling violates the lease agreements of this proposed expansion, or if it does anything unethical with regard to the environment, what authority does the DNR have to hold Camp Grayling responsible? And Tom Barnes, who often accompanies Colonel Scott Myers at these meetings, says, oh, the DNR can do this and the DNR does that. And it's so deceptive. The bottom line is the DNR has virtually no authority over the military. The DNR is not going to shut down the military. It's not going to happen. And I want to point to what Mike was just talking about, that letter by the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, written by Randall Roth. He had a guy with the courage for what used to be the DEQ come forward and say, Camp Grayling is being negligent. They're dragging their feet and they're not doing what they should do to contain the PFAS contamination that is affecting the Otsego, Lake Marguerite, the Manistee, and the drinking water of hundreds of people. He went on record saying that. But what he also did was this, and this is where it really took a lot of courage as a state employee. He wrote a letter to the director of the DNR and said, because Camp Grayling, I'm paraphrasing, because Camp Grayling has demonstrated that it is not taking the PFAS issue on its current 148,000 acres seriously enough and being aggressive enough in dealing with it, he recommended to the Department of Natural Resources to not approve the additional 162,000 acres. The very next day, his spokesperson retracted the article. It doesn't change the fact that his opinion was spot on about it, but here you have, with regard to the question of will the DNR be able to hold Camp Grayling responsible, here was a gentleman trying to tell the DNR to hold Camp Grayling responsible, and he was shut down. And that's a very timely example of how little authority the DNR is actually going to have to hold Camp Grayling responsible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Thank you.
Well, any of the townships here in Otsego County that have not done a resolution, if you would please talk to your people and see. I did send our Chester Township resolution to Ken Borton. Didn't get a response, but at least I wanted him to know that that was there. I think the whole water situation is about as scary as I ever want to hear. And this is the Great Lakes state, you guys. You know, pure Michigan, it's got to stay pure, I'm thinking. So I think we got a lot of information. Thank you guys for bringing that to us. We appreciate it. Here's our
Is there an email address that we can send an email in opposition?
Yes. Awesome question, thank you. So a way that you can actively help us fight this is you can send an email to the DNR director who's going to be making this decision, and that email address is capital D, capital N, capital R, DNR, hyphen, capital D for director, and the word director. So DNR hyphen director at michigan.gov. DNR hyphen director at michigan.gov. You can reach the director of the DNR, Shannon, Lott, at that email.
And what is your Facebook page that has that on there?
And our group is called Camp Grayling Expansion. We're a group of 6,600 concerned citizens who again support our military but oppose the expansion. So if you go to Facebook and you look up Camp Grayling Expansion, you'll find us there and you'll find tons of information. Thank you.
Well, everybody, with the demonstration and the talk we just had now, to go along with Otsego County Commissioners, Hayes Township, Chester Township, Charlton Township, I would like to make a motion to pass a resolution opposing the Camp Grayling expansion. We will need a roll call vote to do that.
You're making a motion?
Yes.
We need a second.
I would like a second, please.
it.
Thank you.
We didn't get the sign-in sheet out there.
Does everybody sign in or just your? Everybody signs in. You want to paraphrase what it says here, where it is and stuff?
Do you want to just go over, yes, just not the whole thing, just go over different parts.
It says, whereas the Otsego County Township Officers Association of Otsego County, State of Michigan, have expressed concerns that expansion of the Camp Grayling as proposed. Whereas Camp Grayling is asking for a 20-year lease for an additional 162,000 acres from the DNR. I'm just gonna touch a few, paraphrase. Has not presented a study confirming the need for the expansion. The contamination of the PFAS has not been remediated. It is among the largest training facilities in the county, and the number of troops being trained is limited in comparison to other National Guard camps. The DNR is seeking public comment on proposed expansion and has met the justifiable concerns from the public about proposed expansion and proposed uses. The proposed expansion would increase the use within the watershed of the Manistee River and its tributaries, increasing the possibility of contaminants reaching the Manistee River and its tributaries. It will have adverse effect on the rural roads of Otsego County trails, state lands, and adverse effects on the health and general welfare of the citizens. It poses expansions into several townships within the county borders or boundaries. And that's pretty much it. So it's basically, we'd like to have a resolution.
So we'll need a roll call vote.
Yeah, but I need that clipboard back.
Oh. Chase it down there.
Alright, this is the Township Association meeting, so those are the people that are gonna vote. So, we have to have, the number of yeas and nays. So I'm going to check it off as we go right down through. My name is first Mary Sanders, yes. Richard Carlson,
Yes.
Cheryl Prusakavich,
Yes.
Norm Breckheisen,
Yes.
Jackie Kaiser,
Yes.
Melissa Szymanski,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Dale, Sue,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
okay, Celeste,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Pat Coldus,
Yes.
Debbie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Mary Brown,
Yes.
Rudy,
Yes.
let's see who we got here. Liz,
Yes.
Beth Dubzinski. All right, then Diane
Yes.
and Bonnie.
Yes.
All right, I think it's pretty obvious that it's a unanimous, yes, do this, count those all up. We'll fill this out, we'll give this to you before you leave, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, thank you.
That will help, that'll be great. All right, next, I had called and went to the commissioners meeting and invited the new commissioners and the new elected commissioners to come to a meet and greet, just to be recognized, meet your townships, and just kind of get acquainted. Matt, would you like to do the honors, please?
And introduce the commissioners?
Please.
Okay. Are they, I'm sure they're all here. Well, I see way over there is Commissioner